I'm Caroline. I'm a flute player and I lead workshops, so I facilitate creative music making for groups of people in all kinds of community settings. Find it. I had read a little bit about Feldenkrais, and I'd experienced a little bit of Alexander technique during my college training, but not very much, and it was as a result of a kind of quite drastic change in circumstances this year that it caused me quite a lot of upheaval, I guess, a big change, and that made me think that maybe there were some issues I could use that transition as an opportunity to work through some things that might be of interest to solve, to do with playing and also to do with thinking and being as well. When I came, I was experiencing a sense of frustration that there was potential I felt I had as a player that I couldn't access. And as I've focused on that sensation more, I can see that what it is kind of tried to lock everything very tightly down, everything kind of clamped tight with a lot of effortfulness and years of trying to squeeze in enough practice around a lot of work, have created tensions around playing which sort of breed themselves, I feel, and that I felt that I couldn't find my way out of that on my own. Well, I've got a much greater sense of how to be aware of movement, much more precise, to do with where tension might be and how to allow movement to happen in those places specifically. Well, we looked quite a lot during the initial phase of sessions about the actual posture that was necessary to play the flute. So when you play the flute, there's always a sort of twist in the body a bit. We looked at how much of that was actually necessary and a sense of what was possible to minimise so that it was as economical a movement as possible and involving as little tension as there needed to be. So we experimented a lot with looking at which of the spinal joints could be moved, when you turn your head, or the jaw, or the shoulder, on the arms as well, sort of looking at how much of the body was involved in any of those things. Also looking at where tension might be held in the body about breathing, around the issue of breathing. So we did quite a lot of work about ribs, freeing them up and allowing more breath to flow, to gain breath capacity, but also to enable it to be not being held in an unhelpful way at any point in the process of breath. I had a sense of there being tension in the throat and jaw, and I think my understanding of that was quite vague because I thought that was all one thing. I thought that where I could hear throat tension, I associated that with the jaw, and I specifically asked you in the early days to help me work on the jaw, and we did do that. But then gradually through that process, I think the sense of the difference between where there was muscle and where there was control, where there was tension, had sort of gradually opened up and become a lot more refined to me. So we did some work on sphincters, the throat sphincter and also the anal sphincter, which I hadn't have thought that was anything to do with breathing, but the sort of sense of those parts of the body being connected and attention has greatly enhanced breath control for me. In terms of performing, it's relatively early days because I think throughout the process that we've spent, that's corresponded with quite a extreme process of learning in flute playing, sort of paring back to essentials. So performing wise, I haven't done so much as I will do. I can feel that there's great potential there. Where I have performed, I've found it really useful to have touchstone kind of phrases about grounding and posture when sitting and standing to play, and the possibility of imagining movement of breath. That's been very useful. I think it's made it possible to withstand the inevitable tension of performance and have some ways to notice it. And I think just by bringing awareness to those things, that tends to improve things. So yeah. I feel incredibly lucky that the Feldenkrais practitioner that I found was you. I've had many lessons of various kinds over a lot of years. I've had, lessons with many flute teachers and piccolo teachers, and I've had Alexander technique lessons. I've had counselling and physiotherapy sessions and sort of recovery from surgery physio and preparation for surgery physio, and all of those contacts with various practitioners have left. I think one starts off with a sense of skepticism, perhaps, that a person isn't going to be able to understand what I need. I think being a teacher myself, maybe that makes it harder to trust what somebody's bringing. But I think I found from very early on that I trusted that you saw me, the sense you gave me, that you paid such close attention to me, you listened to what I said, and you listened to what my body was saying at the same time, and then that has felt incredibly important to me. I'm not sure if that's a Feldenkrais specific thing or if that's a you specific thing. I think it's probably the latter. But an openness you've brought that's encompasses other things as well, that's sort of guided by the lines of inquiry that I want to make or that I bring to each session, and that those have blossomed out in all kinds of ways, which you do skillfully weave them back into things we can work on in a Feldenkrais session. But I never feel that there's anything I couldn't start off exploring here, and that there'll be a way to include those things. It feels like it's very centered on me, that I have no idea if the work you do with other people looks completely different. I'm sure it does, because your session is totally tailored to me, and you respond to the things that are important to me to mention, and on all kinds of different levels. I have a sense that there are physical lines of inquiry in my body, and that there are emotional lines of inquiry with my mood, and then there's my tendency of thinking to try to kind of inquire in a conscious way, and that all of those, none of those alarm you. They all find a place in those sessions, and that's very reassuring to me, because I think perhaps that's something that many teachers that I've encountered don't bring that at all. They have a way that they're going to work, and that you must fit that, but I never feel that here. I think the best things to come out of it are a sense of real possibility that I can approach matters that might be thorny or tricky to solve. I can approach them in more than one way, and that can be a process that's enjoyable, that's pleasurable to explore, rather than weighty and difficult. The process of exploring the ways of holding the body when walking have made quite a lot of difference in how one interacts with the world in general, and that has a knock-on effect in the way that you experience the world through that. And I think that sense of possibility has brought a very different energy to the way I approach my flute playing. I don't think that it's interesting to know that I now am on a process of kind of unpicking my flute playing and sort of putting it together in a different way. But I couldn't have got to being ready to do that sort of work without the work I've done with you. I really don't think that I could have have done that, I wouldn't have known how to understand it, and I have a lot more confidence in my own sense of understanding about things, so that I can see that everybody understands things in a different way and people have different approaches, but I can notice quite a core of confidence in my own understanding of my body and the way that it moves and works. And I think that has come from the work I've done with you, and that makes other things much more possible.